Right. Hi, everyone. Yeah, tonight we're going to talk about the LSD angle of the Manson case. Obviously, tonight that was the theme, and it's like going to be one of these streams where I don't go into huge detail about each subject, but we'll just move into, uh, I'll signpost you to other streams that I've done about these things. It's just tying things together sort of stream. And yeah, I've got the new camera set up, so it's actually meant doing what it's going to do. We've got to do. Look, watch this. If I go like that, that turns on the tracking. So now it will follow me. Or it should, yeah, that's it. See, it follows me when I move around. And I can make it zoom in and out with hand gestures as well. Look. Go on, I'll zoom out again. It won't zoom out now. Go on. It will eventually. To do it with the other hand. That's it. You have to do it with it. There you go. See, look, you can control it with hand gestures. Brilliant. Cool. Right, yeah, that's all the stuff the camera does, basically, yeah. And it's got tracking turned on now. But yeah, there's hand gestures. Basically, yeah. We'll get into the presentation pretty soon. Hello, everyone. See, Dawn's here. Excellent. Yes. Look at your Facebook messages as well, Dawn. That's it. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Did you see the camera, Dawn? Did you see what it did? It just arrived. Look. Yeah, well, I'll show the zoom in and out again later, I'm sure. Yeah, yeah. Right. Yeah, because well, the LSD angle of the Manson case, it was heavily played down during the trial. It only came up in the penalty phase how much LSD they took. By then, it was like too late for it to matter. This is when they're just pleading not to get the death penalty. It's when they've already been sentenced. So, yeah, and it's an interesting subject. We'll get into it. Right, the erasure begins. The Manson family's LSD use wasn't just a footnote; it was foundational. It shaped how they were manipulated, how they manipulated each other, and how they committed murder. But this angle was intentionally buried during the trial. Why? Because LSD meant chaos. Chaos meant unpredictability and insanity defences. Prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi needed a clean story that the jury could follow, Manson as a calculating puppet master. That version didn't leave room for bad trips, brainwashing, or institutional failure. The media followed suit. They didn't want acid casualties or tragic cautionary tales. They wanted monsters. Monsters sell papers. Monsters reassure the public that the evil is separate, not systemic. All the while, the government was running MK Ultra, secretly dosing citizens with LSD to test the very same mind control tactics. To explore the family's drug-fueled descent would have struck too close to home. And for deeper dives, check out my other streams on Dean Moorehouse and Charles Winans, who are both LSD connections to the Manson family, basically. Yes. So yeah. And why? Yeah. Well, why do people think that they wanted to bury the LSD angle? What do you think about it? Yeah. Penalty phase. I don't know if we have anything like this in the UK justice system as well. We must have. I think they call it something similar to the penalty phase. It's like, yeah, it's to do with sentencing, though, isn't it? It's just part of the sentencing. I think they call it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you think Tex was an MK Ultra spook, and he was bringing all that LSD into the family, and who gave Dean Morehouse his first trip? Yeah, it sounds like Manson introduced Dean Morehouse to LSD, but that's hazy as well, isn't it? No, so we looked into the timeline of Tex last week, didn't we? And there's a lot of sinister stuff, like when he's living with David Neal, someone shows up and gives him this hallucinogen rosewood seeds that makes him freak out and punch a hole in the door and stuff like that. So right from when he first arrives in California, people are giving him weird hallucinogenic drugs. Oh, sorry, I've got a cold. I might sneeze. I've got to mute the mic a second. Yeah. And yeah, because Charlie controlled the, yeah, because they wanted the narrative, yeah, that Charlie controlled their minds, not LSD, or that the LSD was only part of that. It was just part of Charlie. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, and it was for Xandos LSD. Well, Timothy Leary was giving it out from Millbrook, wasn't he? And Mama Cass had Xandos LSD from Millbrook. That comes up in her biography, and she took it to Hawaii, which is famous for when they first got together, the mamas and papas, and she turned up with nothing but a bottle of LSD because she lost her luggage on the way there, but she had the LSD in her bra, so she had nothing on her but this LSD. But yeah, it was Timothy Leary's acid. So there was a lot of LSD around these people, and that's not mentioned at all as they're tried. And obviously, because of the oh yeah, and MK Ultra they did, didn't they? Yeah, they set up brothels and they got the prostitutes to give sex workers, we should call them, sorry, to give the men LSD. And they didn't really know what they was even looking for, though. If you look into it, like like they really didn't really know, but they were seeing, yeah, if they could get the men to confess things, I suppose, while they were under the influence of LSD. Crazy. Yeah, well, I've been looking into this because Michael Hollingshead got Zandos LSD as well. They could you could just order it from Zandos for years until it became illegal. So Michael Hollingshead got it directly from Zandos, I think, and Timothy Leary and his mates would have all got it directly from Zandos too. But was Timothy Leary CIA? I am going to go deeper into Timothy Leary and what he was doing with LSD and what ego death is and all that. So that gets mentioned at some point. Yeah. Yeah, you don't think it was Elsie or Zandos? I said, well, in his psychiatry report, Tex smiles whenever they mention Orange Sunshine LSD. And I think I've heard other girls say they had Orange Sunshine, which was rife in California at this time, wasn't it? So, yeah, they probably, and that was very strong, apparently, and good LSD in terms of how well it was made. You know, the people knew what they were doing. Like, right, just the next slide. Let's see. Right, the narrative they needed. So the prosecution needed a story that made sense to the public. LSD meant chaos, and chaos meant unstable defendants, so they could have got insanity as a defense. Tex is the only one who actually used the insanity defense, though. And Bugliosi framed Manson as a cold, calculating mastermind. And a courtroom can't prosecute a cultural collapse, but it can prosecute a man. So, like, because I've got over this over the past couple of months of streams, I've been talking about the Vietnam War and the impact that had on young men who went through dehumanization training if they were in the army or the Marines or whatever, and had to do a tour in Vietnam. They underwent this horrible dehumanization training, and a lot of these men were just wandering about in society, having done a year in Vietnam. And these people probably met the Manson family, and that probably influenced the violence as well, and they didn't want that coming out, did they, in this court case, because it shows the Vietnam War was having a very negative effect on American society. And just the fact that they had allowed LSD to get out of control, because initially it was treated like an artsy thing, wasn't it? They had let the drug use get out of control. They didn't really crack down on it until the early 70s, did they? Yeah, I don't know if they ever got hold of PCP. Thank God Tex never got PCP, eh? Would have been a lot worse. Fucking hell. Excuse me. Yeah, do you think the Manson trial would have played out differently if LSD use had been front and center? If they had talked about it all throughout the trial, that they were possibly on acid when they did it? Because at the penalty phase, I haven't got it tonight to show you, but I can show you there's several places where Susan says she was on LSD and that Tex had taken STP. Both Leslie and Susan say that Tex had been given STP by Linda, and STP is like LSD and speed. Though when I read the Brotherhood of Eternal Love book, that I found out it's actually more like mescaline and speed, STP. So like, yeah, they were all on drugs the night of the murders, but Bugliosi went to great lengths to play that down because he didn't want them being able to claim insanity at the time of the murders. Yeah, if they needed a story to sell the public and they went with the Helter Skelter bogeyman. Yeah, that's it. They knew the target audience, didn't they? Yeah. And also, Bugliosi, before he did this, was an advisor for a TV series as well. So he had made up scripts for TV, and stuff like that. So this is a, and he seized on it. And the Helter Skelter stuff was there. You listen to the tape of Greg Jacobson talking. I've listened to that one. It's one of the ones that's a bit easier to listen to, actually, I think. And yeah, but he had heard a lot about this Helter Skelter. It was definitely real, but it wasn't the motive for the murder. But Bugliosi seized on it and made more of it than it actually was, and sold the public that rather than this narrative that actually there was all kinds of drug dealing going on and this sort of thing, and that these people went so crazy as a result of LSD use and than being just left with Manson and no one doing anything about that situation, you know. Yeah, sorry, trying to read the chat. Yeah, I've got to read his book in more detail because he does actually say more than I thought he would. So it'll be interesting to see what he says. And he's written another book as well. There's not only Will You Die for Me. There's another one, and he's got a blog now. He writes stuff on his on a blog and it stays up now. Yeah, so yeah, and all that because he gave that story about Bernard Crowe. He was in the same prison as Bernard Crowe, and Bernard Crowe said he forgave him. Yeah, that's it. They had speed. They've both admitted that, hadn't they? Haven't they? Separately afterwards, Tex and Susan had taken speed the day of the murders. Yeah, and I'm guessing Linda probably would. Linda was apparently a speed freak. Yeah, and she'd already been arrested for speed, and well, she her and her boyfriend had been prosecuted for selling it. Her previous boyfriend before she even met the Manson family. So she was definitely into speed, wasn't she? Yeah. And yeah, she's the one they used to sell the official narrative because she was saner than Susan and smarter than Susan, and she knew that she could get immunity, and so she took it, you know. But really, she was just as accountable as all of them for these murders, and it's quite shocking she walked away. Mary Brunner as well. I was shocked by how involved Mary Brunner was with the actual Hinman murder, and she did some time later for the gun shop robbery or something, didn't she? But yeah, she was another one who walked. Right, the spiritual weaponization. Manson didn't just give them LSD, he used it to erase identity. He broke them down and rebuilt them in his image. It mirrored what gurus and cult leaders were doing across the country. LSD wasn't enlightenment, it was ego death and reprogramming. Yeah, and like I say, we'll go into Timothy Leary and everything that he did to people. And I found loads of accounts in this book, LSD, Albion Dreaming, the social history of LSD, and it's all about the LSD scene in the UK basically. And there's a few accounts of people that committed suicide after going through the Timothy Leary ego death trip thing, where you go to all the different bardos that I'll explain to you when I get around to doing this stream, including the guy who took the picture for the Sergeant Pepper album cover and Her Satanic Majesty's Request, the Rolling Stones album with a fancy cover, and it was it was like holographic. They winked. If you tilted it, they turned their face and were winking. The guy who took those pictures, he committed suicide, and his suicide note sounds like LSD casualty basically. And so yeah, this kind of in the 60s, people were using it to erase identities and that. And Manson does seem to. Because at first I was cynical about that. I thought these kids really just had their own motives, and it was all like drug motivated. But the more I've looked at it, I do think Manson did mess with their heads and erase their personalities. And you can see the girls saying it, constantly saying how he took us from our parents and gave us back to ourselves and all these weird things like that. Do you know what I mean? He did erase their personalities. And Pat Krenwinkel said a lot about, how she just completely handed her entire personality over to him, and they all just mirrored him, didn't they? It was a very, very disturbing and culty situation. And can it be explained though just by him being, like a controlling narcissist? I think it can, though. That's the thing. Abusive men who are, have abusive relationships do that anyway. This doesn't mean that he was told by the CIA how to do it. Do you know what I mean? I think it is just a result of, his personality disorder, that whatever it is that causes men to do this to women, not necessarily that he was taught by the CIA. But it was just happening in society. People like Timothy Leary and that, yeah, was taking people through these LSD trips and ego death and rebuilding your personality, And he just abused that, didn't he, to more effectively get these girls. Yeah, I forget his name. I think it might be Michael Blake. I'm getting Michael Blake. I might be wrong. Can someone look that up? Who was the guy that took the photo for the Beatles album cover, Sergeant Pepper's? Because he committed suicide and he left a suicide note that suggested, it was because he didn't achieve spiritual enlightenment off LSD, so he felt like he wasn't good enough or something. Yeah, it's really sad. Yeah. Uh, Peter Blake, he's called. Ah, maybe it's someone else then. I'll have to look into it. But no, one of these significant person, yes, because it's in this book. Sorry, yeah. Yeah, well, this is the other thing as well. There's a thing about this argument, the legal argument called Aranda Bruton, that comes up a lot in this trial because they're all going to be blaming each other, aren't they? Basically, yeah, yeah, and they're all being tried together like this as well. They say was a mistake because of all this. Yeah, they're all just selling a story to try and get the less conviction, aren't they? Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's it. They want to close cases and get promotions. Yeah. Ah, right. Ah, no, no, you found the person that planned the photo. Yeah, no, that's a different bloke. No, the photographer that actually took the photo, not the guy who planned it. Yeah, because it was planned. No, no, the actual photographer, and he also took several other album cover photos. He actually took the picture itself. He wasn't the guy that planned it. Yeah, he didn't. Yeah, he was a photographer, not the guy that created the concept. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because I'm sure I've read that. Yeah, it's the guy who actually took the pictures, and he also did a few other famous album covers. He actually took the photograph. Try and find it. Michael Cooper, that's it. That's the one. Yes, Michael Cooper. I couldn't get his name. Michael Cooper was his name. I knew it was Michael something, and I said Michael Blake, didn't I? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Peter Blake helped to. Yeah, yeah. But they were both involved, and I think it's Michael Cooper's the one who committed suicide. Yeah. Oh, glad we sorted that out. Yeah, because I know I wasn't crazy. No, yeah, yeah. Yeah, he met Phil. This is another thing. Yeah, well, I've got to, when I talk about all these things, it's crazy the connections. And loads of these rock stars had nervous breakdowns, even if they didn't commit suicide, after going to the Psychedelic Institute in London. I think it's bloody Clapton, Brian Jones, Mick Jagger, loads of them, and John Lennon. I've actually isolated the part of the interview where John Lennon sounds depressed and says something about the Timothy Leary shit, having to go through the Timothy Leary shit, and that's him when he went to the psychedelic thing, and he had a big breakdown after it. Whatever Michael Hollingshead was doing, he was messing people up. He wasn't taking them where they were meant to go, you know. Uh, yeah, well, this is it. The defence, in the end, they seem to at the penalty phase. This is the only time they talk about it, and that's like meant to be when you're meant to be pleading with the jury to not give them the death penalty, aren't you? But it actually just made them look worse. It didn't actually help at that point. I don't think Daishin handled it really badly. The way he got Susan to speak, it was just it didn't help. Yeah. And what's my next slide? Yeah, the LSD. Oh, yeah. There's all these different connections. Yeah. The Mendocino arrests. Brenner and Atkins caught during an acid-fueled trip, and Krenwinkel was with them as well. This is the Mendocino witches thing. I've done an old stream about the Mendocino witches incident, but there's more I could find out about that because there's more documents available if I sign up to Bo's Patreon, the guy from SilloDrive.com, Bo Emerson. He's put up all these documents, but that was all to do with LSD as well. They were caught supplying LSD to minors. And the Candyman trips, Tex and Davis went north to score drugs, sometimes with Manson. And there's other times people talk about. But Candyman was just a slang term for drug dealer in those days. So whenever they say Candyman, it might not always be the same bloke. It could be different people. And Dean Morehouse was the preacher to LSD evangelist who introduced Charlie to acid culture. Apparently, yeah, yeah. It was actually Dean Morehouse that gave Charles Manson LSD. Yeah, fucking messed up, and like he doesn't get talked about at all. He was in prison by the time the murders happened. You see, so he wasn't involved as the murders were happening. But he's the one who ran off with took Terry Melcher's car to go to his court case and took Tex with him uh, for 2 weeks and left his daughter alone with Melcher, Ruth Morehouse. And Charles Winans, I did 3 streams about Charles Winans. There's actually 3 don't because there's so much information I couldn't fit it all into one. Make sure you watch all 3 parts because there's a lot about this guy. A mysterious figure tied to LSD and the family's northern network. And Tex Watson may have trafficked LSD, explored in depth in my dedicated text stream, and none of this came up at trial. The jury never saw how surrounded they were by acid. That's it. They never talked about this at all. It was just and all these things, and these are all things I've done streams about already. But yeah, there's lots and lots of talk of acid. And the newspapers were talking about it as well, weren't they? I think there were a lot of newspaper articles talking about how it might have affected the murders, but actually in court and in terms of, how the case was tried, they really, really wanted to keep it out. And there's parts in Helter Skelter. I'm trying to find them and isolate them now where Bugliosi says he didn't want Susan to say she was on drugs the night of CLO Drive because he didn't want her to get the insanity defense, basically. So they were working hard to make sure that they didn't admit if they were on drugs or not. Yeah. Yeah, well, this is the thing, the Haight-Ashbury thing as well, but that's so long before the murders, like, I suppose they could get away with saying it's not relevant, couldn't they? Yeah, that's it. And you don't buy Dennis Wilson was having gay sex? Oh, come on. Of course he was. He had a reputation for it. He didn't care, did he? He would sleep with anything. He was just a sex fiend, wasn't he? He didn't care. And it had to be covered up to protect the Beach Boys legacy. That's why they hushed it up. But yeah, I can totally believe that he was bisexual. Yeah, what if Abigail Folger? Yeah, because well, we know that she funded an event that Bobby's band played at, and that she probably knew them from Haight-Ashbury because she volunteered at the clinic. And there was a bookshop that linked a Manson girl to Abigail Folger as well. So there's several ways Abigail Folger might have known them, and therefore been able to identify them, recognise them. So that's why they might have had to kill Abigail Folger because she might have recognised them and been able to identify them and known they were linked to Charles Manson as well. And that's another thing they want to cover up, that Abigail Folger might have known the killers. Yeah, that's it. And the fact that, yeah, Melcher likes the young girls. He liked Ruth Morehouse, didn't he? They all loved Ruth Morehouse by the sound of things. Yeah, they all talk about it. It's quite shocking, really. In this day and age, it doesn't fly. But back then, there was like, oh, as long as she's not a virgin and she's down with it, sort of thing. Yeah, it's all right. But no, we know that's not right now, don't we? Yes, I hope. Whereas a society, it is not an acceptable attitude to have anymore, is it? But yeah, at this point in the 60s, they were trying to push for it to become acceptable, weren't they? And always a section of society that still are, I think. And you just got to be firm against them, stand firm against it, haven't you? Yeah, Neil Lemon states Manson met Dennis Wilson in 1967 in San Francisco. Yeah, and I've heard he actually met him first at Gary Hinman's house. So was that about venereal disease? Yeah, venereal disease was a big concern back then. Yeah, that's why they like him. Yeah, to be so young, I suppose. Oh God, yeah. Well, the Haight-Ashbury Clinic was curing a lot of VD, wasn't it? That was part of the reason why they set that up, because there was a VD epidemic with all the free love. And Dennis Wilson is supposed to have paid for Charlie's girls to be treated at VD clinics a couple of times, isn't he, and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah, and so it wasn't really after Dennis Wilson picked up two of the girls hitchhiking. Yeah, that story's complete bullshit. Apparently, Dennis Wilson already knew Charles Manson before that happened. Even if it did happen like that, he did already know him. It wasn't the first time he had met him. And the penalty phase truth. Only after the guilty verdict did LSD enter the narrative. The girls finally spoke about being high. Experts said they had taken LSD hundreds of times. One psychiatrist said LSD changes their personalities and lives. But by then it was too late for it to matter in court. And yeah, because though we can't find the transcript of exactly everything Patricia Krenwinkel said, like we can Leslie and Susan, from newspaper articles, they've quoted her, and she said she'd taken it about 300 times LSD, and she said the famous quote from her, I used it in the thumbnail about the stream from her, is, "Oh, I've taken so much LSD, I am LSD." Patricia Krenwinkel said during the penalty phase. And also, there's a rumor that they had LSD sewn into the hems of some of the dresses they were given, so to wear in court. So they were actually tripping on the way into court while they were sat in court, which may explain some of their laughing and funny behaviour. They actually had acid in court. Yeah, well, that is what they all say. Yeah, that they were having quite an intense affair. Yeah, sort of thing. Tex was really into Linda, and he obviously he had a thing for women that sold drugs as well, didn't he? Because he lived with Rosina before that as well. So he obviously he liked free drugs, I suppose, didn't he? So shacking up with a drug dealer. And he talks about how crappily he treated Rosina as well, still sleeping with other women and taking her for an abortion and all this sort of stuff. And then he still crushed the car and she smashed her head into the. Oh god, yeah, like my god, you bastard, Tex. Worst boyfriend ever. Tex lived with Wilson before that supposed hitchhiking story. Yeah, so Tex, this is the other thing that they play down. Tex was actually living at Dennis Wilson's house before Charles Manson arrived. So Tex, what did Tex see in this time while he was there? And was Tex like a go-between Hollywood and the Manson family? Do you know what I mean? Because he was more respectable looking and clean cut and polite and not as scary as Charlie. So like, did they use him as the go-between to score drugs and loose women or these young women, really young women? Because people say obviously like why would Terry Melcher want to sleep with these girls when he had Candice Bergen and stuff like that? But it's because he could get underage girls from Charlie. That was the horrible secret that they was trying to cover up. That was what he wanted. And just because they could as well. They were the golden penetrators, weren't they? And they just wanted to sleep with as many women as they could. It's just that gross. Yeah. Yeah, they say Tex was Dennis Wilson's houseboy and they made gay porn. Imagine that. Yeah, and Dennis Wilson is supposed to have had the tape player that would play these porn tapes that this ring were supposedly making. This is something that Charles Manson said in an interview that got published in several magazines, and it's been in several books as well. I've read it, but he said, yeah, that there was uh, it was a television and tape combi, and the tapes only this network had, and you just put the tape in the player and could watch it basically. And it was like very early VCR and 60s version of VCR sort of thing. And yeah, Dennis Wilson is supposed to have had that at his house. And there were plenty of filmmakers around, weren't there? Obviously, everyone was getting into making movies and that, so a lot of them probably had these home cameras, didn't they? It's not hard to believe at all. I think it was an MK Ultra experiment. 10 years later was Jonestown. Same on a slightly larger level. Do you think these were actually orchestrated by the government? Well, see, I don't think that this was meant to happen, but I think as soon as it did happen, they used it as a tool to like make the counterculture look bad and everything, and to seek more control over things and all that. But I don't think that this was meant to happen, that this was planned, and it was an experiment. But I think it was a consequence of stuff like MK Ultra and them releasing LSD on society as an experiment just to see what would happen. And as a result, some bad things happened as well, didn't they? A lot of people had good experiences, and it made them closer to nature, and it was enlightening for them. But the downside is some people it drove absolutely crazy, or some people abused it and used it to control people. You know, that's the truth of how these things pan out usually. Yeah, yes, this is Mary's mosaic book, isn't it? Mary Pinochet Meyer gave JFK LSD, and they think that's why she was killed. She was murdered on a canal towpath as well. It was a horrible death. Yeah, she wasn't like killed nicely like Marilyn Monroe, injected with an overdose. Someone strangled her to death on a canal towpath, and they think it might be because she took LSD with JFK, and they were worried about what he might have said to her because he had told Marilyn Monroe about the Roswell incident, hadn't he, basically? And she was threatening to blurt that out, and that's probably why they had to murder her. Excuse me. Mhm. Uh, yeah, I think people should look more at Tex. If you're thinking of someone who was being manipulated by the CIA, I think Tex looks like a more likely candidate. I think that Charlie was too unpredictable to be used in that way. I think Tex is the one that was more likely to have been manipulated. And when you start to hear about, early on, he's getting given weird hallucinogens that aren't commonly taken. by people and that, and all the stuff he hasn't told us as well. There must be so much he hasn't told us. And what the hell did Charles Manson mean by the game with the Hell's Angels and part of Texas Mind and all this? It's like, oh my god, there's so much that we don't know and probably never will know. Oh god, yeah, and just talking about their emotional detachment. See, I've got that little collage there. This shows their descent sort of thing. Yeah, there's like when they're found guilty in the first picture, then near the end of penalty phase, and then yeah, when the death sentence verdict is read to them, and then the final one when their heads are completely shaved and they've got the X's in their forehead is when they're officially sentenced to death by means of gas chamber. And yeah, you see the smiles gradually getting wiped off their faces. Right, emotional detachment on the stand. So that yeah, the things that Susan Atkins said and Leslie said as well. Susan Atkins, she kept pleading, and I got sick of it, so I stabbed her. She was talking about Sharon Tate there. And Leslie Van Houten said a shark doesn't feel hatred when it kills. When they asked her how she felt when she stabbed the woman, she said, I felt like a shark. She said a shark doesn't feel hatred when it kills. And Manson famously said, these are your children, I just tried to help them stand up. So yeah, blaming society, basically. Say, no, it wasn't my fault. You shouldn't have left them there for me to pimp out to the Hollywood guys. You should have looked after them, which is really probably what he meant. He knew that, isn't it, as well? Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, but these signs of emotional detachment are also like PTSD and drug psychosis symptoms as well, and that was never taken into account at all, was it? It was all just treated like they were monsters because that's easier for people to understand and more media friendly, easier to tie up in a 1 hour TV special, isn't it? Than how long it takes to go over all these different threads that that you pull together. Yeah. Yeah, quite a few slides. Oh yes, Patricia Krenwinkel, the shit she said. I stabbed her and I kept stabbing her. I had a knife in my hand and I just kept stabbing. And the lawyer asked, what did you feel? She said, nothing, it just felt right. It was a picture of motion and reaction. Yeah, she seemed particularly cold when she talked about stabbing people. And this is the pictures they brought in of her at the penalty phase. That's her in her Easter dress, and that's her certificate that she got for memorizing part of the Bible when she was a child. Patricia's parents said she was gentle, emotional, and cried when her canary died. Her mother said, nobody can tell me she did anything horrible. I hate to break it to you, love, but. And her father said she was a completely different person after Manson. She was a campfire girl, a church choir, Bible verse memorization, very far from a cult killer. This is what she was like before she met Manson. And I have to say, out of all these girls looking into them, well, Susan and Leslie, Susan had already committed armed robbery and stuff like this. And Leslie was sort of on a bit of a path to be sadistic, and she had reason to be angry at the older generation and stuff like that. So she was maybe going down a dark path. But Patricia Krenwinkel really looks like the least likely to become a serial killer, and it makes you wonder what the hell did he do to her that turned her into what she became, and what she did so brutally to Abigail Folger. Because the horror of it, because the woman was running away from her, she chased the woman down, and there's a wound in the back of her head. She must have stuck the knife in the back of Abigail Folger's head to stop her from running. It's like, oh my god, really, really brutal and violent. And out of all of them, she seems like the least likely. It's really quite disturbing. Yeah, and the good mind for memorization and a young and naive, you can see that as being an easy person to manipulate. And another thing that struck me about it is apparently Manson also had memorized a lot of scripture because when he was a child and he lived with his aunts, they got him to memorize scripture every Sunday. And so he could come out with scripture and they would back and forth with each other. Him and Krenwinkel were back and forth quoting scripture to each other. And that might be one of the ways he convinced her that he was Jesus, because she'd be thinking, how does this man know the Bible so well? Because she's memorized the whole part of the Bible. She knows the Bible, so she knows he's right. And she must have been thinking, well, how could he possibly know that? He's just a common criminal off the street, you know what I mean? And he probably did use that to manipulate her. Because I actually believe her now when she says that she thought he was a god and she thought he was Jesus and all that, you know. And I think they thought Bobby was as well, and they tried to play that down. Because there are parts of the penalty phase where they say they thought Bobby was God as well. They were like, you know, brothers to each other, connected sort of thing, and they've played this down very much. But not really, because they want you to believe it was only out of their love for Manson that they did this. But I think Krenwinkel is the only one who actually did it just to impress Manson, to be quite honest. I think that Leslie and Susan were trying to save Bobby, and Susan because she was worried about what he was going to say about her and the Hinman murder, and Leslie just because Bobby was her boyfriend. Because Leslie actually turned up with Bobby and Gypsy. This is the thing a lot of people don't realise. Leslie was actually Bobby's girlfriend, not Manson's, and she wasn't really that into Manson, and she'd only been there 6 months, whereas Susan and Patricia Krenwinkel had been with him for years, nearly 2 years. You know, so it's the story is very different if you look into it. Yeah, yeah. Stephen Kay describes Manson as being able to recite Bible verses at will during parole hearings. Yeah, and this is because his aunts made him memorize scripture when he was a child. Not because he was, but it made him look holy because people were like, wow, how did he know that? He doesn't look like the kind of guy who would have read the Bible, but he was taught to memorize the Bible when he was a child. It was common in the in the past when there was nothing to do. You just got your kids to sit and memorize parts of the fucking Bible. Kept them quiet. Yeah, Bobby was only a god in between the sheets. Yeah, the god of knocking people up by the sound of things. Yeah, yeah. What did you do? Was there a scripture O level? My God. Yeah. Oh no. Oh, don't worry. It'll be up on playback tomorrow once I've edited it. I only cut the song off the beginning and take out any long pauses. Yeah. The second coming. Yeah, yeah. Manson's sloppy seconds. Yeah. And he was certainly fertile. Yeah, he did get a lot of yeah. The second coming. Yeah, that's what he was getting at. I think. Isn't it? Yeah, yeah. Didn't pull out, obviously. Right, and why this matters. What happens when we erase the context around evil? The danger wasn't just Manson, it was the system that made him possible. This isn't just about a cult, it's about how society covers its own complicity. For more on the erased evidence, check out my other streams on Moorehouse, Winans, and Tex Watson. Because, yeah. Sorry. Should I look at something? Hmm. Yeah, it was a free O level. You could actually do an O level in scripture. Yeah, by the time I was they call them GCSEs. By the time I was doing it, and it was yeah just RE religious education. Yeah, there was no separate scripture. I don't know though if you went to a Church of England school, maybe you could do an O level in scripture. But yeah, yeah, yeah. Manson and Freemasonry. He seemed to know a lot about Freemasonry, but I think he got it out of books. Charles Manson, that is. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. The more you know, the more you think it's text. Yeah, and that's it. This is what I've always thought right from the beginning, because I always thought, why are they trying to divert attention away from text? Why is it all about Manson and Susan Atkins? Why are they trying to divert? So I've always been looking into Krenwinkel and text, trying to find out what they're covering up. And it is really that, yeah, it was all Tex's fault, basically. All this happened because of text. Excuse me, I hope it doesn't pick me up gulping this tea down. Yeah. Yeah, and you think Tex was the spook. I don't think he was knowingly like an agent, but he was probably being manipulated and watched and that sort of thing. But I get the feeling that this was not intended to happen. I think something went wrong. If anything, they were pushing them to go and start fights with the Black Panthers. But something went wrong because these kids had gone out and done their own shit, and they took it out on white people in Beverly Hills, which was not what they wanted, you know. But at the same time, that makes a great distraction from loads of political stuff because it's a wedge issue, right? If you watch those well, the World Burn series, I tell you about wedge issues, right? And violent crime is a wedge issue, especially when rich white people get murdered. That's a massive distraction because everyone's into, looking at it and talking about how tragic it is that these pretty rich white people. If it's a pretty rich white child as well, like John Benet Ramsey, fucking massive, massive distraction, isn't it? Basically. And so they used it for that, definitely. That's a point. Yeah, I've not thought of that. Yeah. Was he busted while he was working at the airline and forced into it? Or forced to be an informant, and is that what he was doing there? Yeah, yeah. But then why would they fucking let him go and murder all these people? I suppose it would compromise their undercover investigation or whatever, wouldn't it? Yeah. But yeah, I can't see Tex being anything to do with law enforcement, really. Oh yeah, Madeleine McCann, yeah, because that's a crazy rabbit hole as well because it's like who done it, and everyone thinks her parents did it somehow, didn't they, or whatever. And there's been so much, yeah. There's people with whole channels devoted to the Madeleine McCann case, and John Benet Ramsey. That's another one that yeah people talk endlessly about, don't they? Yeah. And now it actually looks like her brother probably did it, and her parents covered it up and probably sent him to some private institution because he did have problems. And if they had just admitted what had happened and sent him to an institution when he was younger, he could have moved on from it. But they've covered it up, haven't they? So now he's got to just pretend he didn't do it, and tragic life for the kid, isn't it? And all because the mother was too selfish to let him go away for a few couple of years to an institution or whatever. Didn't want to lose both her babies. Hmm. You thought all members of the Manson family, possibly Tex, they were thought to be antagonising the Panthers, yeah. Because they were fed this that Bernard Crowe was a Panther, weren't they? But Bernard Crowe actually had no connection to the Panthers. It is like someone was trying to make them paranoid about the Panthers. And also, it says in the Spine Ranch raid report, an undercover police officer arrived the day the Bernard Crowe incident happened, the day that Tex went out and did the drug burn, and then Charles Manson went out that night. Fucking an undercover police officer had just arrived at Spine Ranch. So there were undercover coppers there, possibly manipulating them. And they did send in agitators to disrupt gangs and that. They might have been trying to start and maybe that's where this race war came from. Someone inside was trying to make them paranoid about this race war. But it didn't pan out like they expected because they didn't go and just start on black people. They went and attacked people in Beverly Hills, didn't they? Yeah, that's it. Well, this is another thing as well, divide and conquer, isn't it? That's the other thing about all these issues. And also immigration as well. They use immigration as a wedge issue. They want you to blame it all on migrants, whatever all the problems are. And it's not never just about migration. It's always about, endemic system failures and, the economy just being crap. It's not about migration. In fact, we need migration because all our doctors and nurses and shit like that don't come from this country anymore. No one wants to do these jobs who are from this country because it's so horrible now. And social care, no one wants to work in social care anymore because it's so horrible. It's terrible. Yeah, they want us to blame immigrants and stop all the immigrants. Yeah, yeah. Oh, they're ignored down here as well, Don. And they're not just close, not just in the north. Everyone's ignored everywhere. All the poor white people are, and the black people. It's just as bad down here. Don't think it's any better. Yeah. The FBI set up a shootout on the UCLA campus between the Panthers and another black radical group, yeah. And well, that murder of Fred Savage as well was crazy. And I didn't show it, but there was a news clip that was put out the night he died saying that the Black Panthers opened fire on them. And the evidence showed that the Panthers only fired one shot in response, and the whole room was filled with bullets for them. And it wasn't just Fred Hampton they killed, whatever his name was. Did I get his name wrong? I didn't call him Fred Savage. Sorry, the guy from the Black Panthers, the leader of yeah. But I did a stream about him, and he was killed by the FBI because he was going to be the next Martin Luther King or whatever. Yeah, yeah. They've still got Johnny West files. You can look at an index of them online. You just can't see the actual files, but you can see what's in there. And there's something. He's got a presentation about witchcraft, and he's got presentations about mind control and stuff like that. I'd love to see what they were about and what he did in them. And there are a few presentations he gave that you can find on YouTube of him talking about cult programming because he took on Scientologists, didn't he, in the 80s? And there's a few lectures he gave, and you can actually see him speaking if you're interested in seeing him speak. He gives me the creeps. Hampton, yeah, that's his name. Fred Hampton. Sorry if I called you Fred Savage, Fred Hampton. Totally different guy. That's a totally different guy. Yeah, yeah. The FBI have not shot him yet, as far as I know. Yeah. Yes, The Secrets of the Hells Angels. I've shared it in the Facebook group. Yeah, it's really good. And you might have to use a VPN to watch it, but it's on 4 on demand. Really good. I'll recommend a couple of episodes. But George Christie's interviewed in it, and it's all stuff about what the Hells Angels did in the 70s. And it's really, really bad, basically. Yeah, they were not nice people. Very disturbing. And I want to look more into this Hells Angels purge that George Christie talks about. He says Terry the Tramp was the beginning of this purge of the Hells Angels, and they obviously got much more violent and nasty in the 70s. It's horrible. Yeah, yeah. You always suspected Fred Savage. Yeah, yeah, was a political agitator. Yeah. Have you got a VPN? Yeah. No, we don't need it because we're in the UK. I mean, for the people in America, they won't be able to watch 4OD when they go to they click on the site. It will say you've got to be in America, in England, won't it? Yeah. So don't need to use a VPN. But yeah, George Christie's in it. I'm pretty sure I saw it on Sky as well, so maybe it has been shown in America. You might be able to find it. Look for a series called The Secrets of the Hells Angels. There's some really horrible stuff. Yeah, it's all bad stuff. Yeah, there's nothing lovely and brotherly about them. But yeah, at this point, and there never really was. Yeah, Fred Savage, the wonder years. Totally different bloke to Fred Hampton from the Black Panthers. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The lovely, respectful guys we have now. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, like I say, it probably has been shown in the US as well. If you just search for it, you might be able to find it. But it is worth watching. Yeah, yeah, it is. It's got to be an American production because it's all Americans being interviewed in it. Yeah. Oh yeah, because that is in the 60s, isn't it? Is 1969 one of the years in the Wonder Years? Because I saw Men in Black 3 last night, and he jumps back to 1969, but he's in July of 1969. It's like, you missed out that then. But I'm pretty sure there's a bit when it zooms in on some hippies walking down the street on the other side of the road, and they're meant to be the Manson family or whatever, but no. And they're in New York as well, so yeah, unrealistic, unrealistic. Yeah, yeah, that's it. Getting Fred Savage mixed up with Fred Hampton. Oops. Yeah. Well, I think there is. Is that the final slide? No, there's one more. Right. This story isn't about monsters, it's about mirrors. The LSD was real, the control was real, the manipulation was real, and the erasure, that might be the most dangerous part of all. Because, yeah, the fact they erased so much of it, yeah. The past and what they were doing, and the fact that the thing that bothers me the most about all of this is that Charles Manson was never ever done for sex trafficking. Because then they'd have to say who he was trafficking to, wouldn't they? Basically. So they couldn't charge him. This is why it had to be covered up, because it would come out that he had been supplying girls to Doris Day's son and his friends, basically, yeah. And God knows who else were at these parties, you know. Does sound like there were like big, lots of orgies going on around this time. Yeah. Oh god, yeah, Ozzy Osbourne died as well. Got to mention that, yeah. Just to ground this in time for people watching this on playback in years' time. This is the weeks that Ozzy Osbourne died. And Hulk Hogan and some jazz singer, I've forgotten her name already, is it Cleo something? She died this week. And the guitarist from Golden Earring. I don't know if you like Golden Earring. Maybe we'll listen to Golden Earring and some Black Sabbath on the after show. Since, yeah, oh, I love Golden Earring. Radar Love. They did Radar Love, by the way, everyone. Yeah, if no one knows. Mm. Yeah, Ozzy. Ozzy's dead. Bloody hell. Thought he was going to live forever. But no, he did bloody well considering what he did to his body with drugs. He did quite well to make it to 76, didn't he? Wow. And to still be able to sing 2 weeks before you die or a week before you die as well. That's pretty fucking amazing. Cleo Lane, that's her name. Yes, the jazz singer that died. And yeah, all in the same week as well. It's like when Lemmy died, loads of people died around the same time as him, didn't they? Didn't Bowie, Lemmy, and someone else would die in the same year? Oh God, yeah. David Bowie died on my dad's birthday, and Jeff Beck, I think, and also Frank Zappa died on my mother's birthday, the same year she died. So yeah, it's messed up, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. He was a force, and yeah, he did, and he did bad things as well. But he took responsibility for it. He was apologetic for all the things he did, wasn't he? And you got to remember as well, drug addiction is an illness, and alcohol addiction, and that it is an illness. It's not something that people do just for a laugh. Though it looks like he was having a lot of fun. He was ill, so you can't like really hate him for the things he did while he was really wasted. But there's some crazy stories. If there's one from Motley Crue, isn't there, that he walked out? The Motley Crue was stood by a swimming pool in a hotel or something, and he walked over to Motley Crue and said, "Hello, everyone," and he saw fire ants crawling on the floor, and he snorted the fire ants. He got down and snorted the fire ants, and he said, and they were all drinking, and he said, "Oh, why haven't I got a drink?" And Vince Neil pissed on the floor, just started pissing on the ground next to the swimming pool. And Ozzy Osbourne got down and started licking up Vince Neil's piss. Yeah, that's a nice story about Ozzy Osbourne to remember him by. Yeah, yeah, Zappa died on the 4th of December, and that's my mother's birthday. And he died the same year she died, but on her birthday. Crazy. Yeah, yeah. By the end, he probably was. Oh God, I was seeing this thing about as well because I do watch all these videos where they're talking about these wacky conspiracy theories. Not that I believe it, but necessarily, but yeah. But they're showing there's an artist called Youngblood, and the Osbournes have been promoting him loads, right? And they're making out that Ozzy's done a soul transfer into this artist Youngblood, basically. Yeah, fucking hell, yeah, yeah. But there's interviews of Kelly Osbourne and Sharon Osbourne interviewing this Youngblood, and they're reacting to how similar to Ozzy he is, and they're going, "Oh wow, yeah, you're just like Ozzy." She said, like he says something like, "Oh, when I'm alone, I just like to sit and watch war movies in the morning," and they're going, "Wow, that's exactly what Ozzy does." And I find that really weird that Ozzy Osbourne watched war movies. He wrote War Pigs, I suppose, though, so it shouldn't be that surprising that he liked war movies. But yeah, look into that if you're interested in those sorts of theories. Yeah, there is this crazy conspiracy theory going around that they did a soul transfer into this artist Youngblood for Ozzy Osbourne, and he is actually looking. Apparently, looks like he's being managed by Sharon Osbourne. So they've probably put the rumor around themselves just to create buzz around him. Clever bastards. Yeah, that's it. Oh, anyone who actually believes that is insane. Yeah, yeah. But there's some really compelling videos put together, like, oh yeah, oh really. But no, it's this stupid thing like at some party or some awards event or something. You see Ozzy Osbourne touching Youngblood's forehead and doing this or something like that at the same time, and they go, "Look, this is the soul transfer happening." But yeah, right. Yeah. No, I don't think that he did transfer his soul into Ozzy Osbourne. No, Ozzy Osbourne's soul into Youngblood. But I bet they'll play on it. the record companies actually put these rumors around deliberately because they know it creates interest in the artists, because it's all about algorithms nowadays as well, isn't it? It doesn't matter if it's negative or positive attention. People are going to be making videos about it. This is why Taylor Swift does it. On every tour Taylor Swift does, there's some song that looks like an occult ritual. They all put on robes and start standing in a circle and chanting or something, and everyone goes on TikTok to talk about, oh look what Taylor Swift's doing. And this is why she's the fucking richest pop star in the world. Stop falling for it, everyone. It's bollocks. Yeah, that's it. It's all just showbiz. It's showbiz. And they do it just to make us talk about it. Don't fall for it. It's not real. Oh, wow. You're only Ozzy Osbourne story, if you can call it that. You saw him wandering backstage at the Rolling Stones gig at Bingley Hall in Stafford, clad head in toe in black leather, swigging brandy from a bottle. Sorry, I left a little gap there for suspense, yeah. Yeah. Eyes wide shit, yeah. The eyes wide shit parties, yeah, because actually all they're doing is taking loads of drugs and passing out. There's actually nothing that interesting going on, yeah. It's just to fucking make people talk about shit. That's what it is. Yeah. Is she though? Yeah, maybe, that's it. Probably. Oh, fucking hell, and there was the whole thing about she's a clone of Xena LaVey. Did you hear that? That was a good one, yeah. But there was people that was making videos like seriously believing that she's a clone of Xena LaVey. Now it's changed to she's Nicholas Shrek and Xena's kid, and they just gave her to the entertainment industry or some shit. Yeah. Right. Oh, well, we've hit an hour now. Right. So I could end this and go to an after show because we're rambling a bit, aren't we? But thanks for coming, everyone. Good amount of viewers. We've got the camera working now as well, doing what it's meant to do. Though it has gone dark again, hasn't it? It seems to have gone a bit dark, even though there's a light in the room. Weird. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, Taylor Swift's an American pop singer. She's not a witch. Yeah. Or even if she is, that doesn't fucking mean much. It's just nature worship, basically. It doesn't mean that she has magical fucking powers or anything. It's just religious beliefs. Don't read too much into it. Fuck's sake. Anyway, on that note, yeah, I'll end this now. And if you wait, about 5 minutes, I'll do an after show. Make sure you have the notifications turned on and the bell clicked. And you have to have YouTube notifications turned on your phone as well to get the notifications, because people are saying they can't find the after shows or they have trouble finding me when I'm live. If you haven't got the notifications turned on, you won't get a notification when I go live. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, give me 5 minutes or I'll see you next week if you're watching this on playback. Thanks for coming, everyone. Oh, and like the stream and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you in a bit.